Hey, what's going on out there, YouTube family? This is Samuel here representing Team JVS. I'm back again for another review. This is for Lovecraft Country. So the name of this episode is Jig-A-Bobo. Jig-A-Bobo. But I didn't know, and every time I watch these, I never get to look at the preview of what's going to happen in the next episode. So just keep that in mind, bear that in mind. I am very excited to go and break down this episode with Lucas. You guys will be getting our in-depth spoiler-filled review on the same exact night, so definitely go and check that out. I'm actually going to see this on the same exact night, so it doesn't matter. The thing about this episode is that it surrounded the murder of Emmett Till. And you find out that Dee was best friends with Emmett. And, you know, to be honest with you, I actually watched this episode twice. First time I watched it, through certain circumstances, I couldn't really hear it as well. But I did recognize that this had some layers to it. This has some really very thought-provoking layers to it. It was more reminiscent of like episode 5, I would say, like Strange Case, like with Ruby. Ruby does make an appearance in this episode. She actually has a profound upset circumstance that happens. I'll be fair, there's a scene with Ruby that probably is one of the most goriest, nastiest, sensual scenes I think I've seen like ever. It was disgusting. But there was a conversation she has with William about Emmett, and you know what it was doing to her, what she was feeling, and the connection as far as their relationship or friendship or whatever you want to call it, what she wanted from William, what she wanted from Christina to feel. And later on, that does have a interesting A Time to Kill, Matthew McConaughey moment towards the third half of this episode. One thing I'll say about that specific scene is that is not in reminiscent of what really happened to Emmett Till. I went back and did a refresher, the specifics about what happened to Emmett Till, and how long he was beaten and where he was taken around town, and the fact that he was not just beaten, but he was beaten to the point of unrecognition, to the point that eye out of his socket, to the point that like part of his ear was shot, and then like everything else that surrounded it, like let's just say the visual that they present in this, I think it's an admirable concept when it comes to a specific character. I'm not going to spoil it here. I get why they did that just based on the conversation between Christina and Ruby. I do get it. I do think that Christina is like manipulating, obviously, but I don't understand why she did what she did towards the third act. It seems like there is some kind of emotional connection, like honestly, between Christina and Ruby, which is just Christina knows what she wants, and I think that same exact thing goes for Ruby. Now, there's also an interesting moment where Journey, I'm talking about Letty, goes to a church, and I think there was a very, another really good conceptual concept, that was happening, even the conversation that actually happened with Christina during that same exact time. Like, it was, again, just like the situation that was going on in the third act, which was not a good, it's not the full representation of what actually happened. I think that they kind of held back for obvious reasons, but I think that if you want to really tell this, you really have to go for it. I think the best identification of what happened with Emmett Till happened in the very first act, and just kind of watching Dee just unravel and watching everybody just hot and bothered and trying to get through it. And there's this open pan shot I think is really beautiful, actually, beautifully sad and terrifying, that kind of happens. But again, with this church scene, when it comes to Christina, it just comes off like Letty is being stupid or unrealistically dumb in what she thinks that she's about to do. There's another moment with, with actually Montrose and even with Letty in connection to D. One thing I didn't like about this episode is that their lack of concern and assistance for D. Like, you gotta understand, like, none of them have been like, as far as we can tell, like, as far as it's because it's an anthological episodic kind of series, it's hard to tell if they've had like open-ended conversations with D. Like, how are you doing? You lost your dad. Like, what's going on with you? Like, let me be there for you. Like, none of them even do that. And now the mom is gone, because we know what happened, but she don't. As far as she knows, mom's dead. And then her best friend just got, like, it's like, I understand, you know, everybody's trying to preserve their own life, but this little girl, even by her own mom standards, just kind of just left her to the curb, left her to the wolves. And unfortunately, in this episode, she has to deal with these kind of wolves, like from a metaphorical standpoint. Like, there's an altercation she happens with the police that I think I was like rebuking and binding, to be quite honest with you. But to be fair, even with that, I was like, this is gonna sound bad. I felt like with that scene too, that could have been a lot worse. Now, I think, granted, what they did was bad, but realistically, I think that it could have been realistic. I think that they would have probably done that and then worse. I feel like sometimes that the show kind of holds back. And I'm not saying that this episode's a bad episode. I think it's actually one of the better episodes. Again, episode 5 was one of my favorite episodes, and I think this was one of the most entertaining, if I can say anything positive. She has to deal with certain things that are coming at her because somebody did to her, and that jump's creepy. I'm not gonna lie to you, like that whole situation was creepy. Then there's this one final sequence, bro. The final sequence of this episode was intensely crazy. Like, it was intensely crazy. It was you ain't ready for it. That's all I can really say. I'll break it down more in our spoiler review of me and Lucas. Again, I think this is one of the better episodes, but I think that there's certain things that they always seem to just kind of hold back. And it's kind of like one of the biggest things about community and African American community, especially during that era and time, is that people are gonna be on each other. Like, I'm not talking about physically or sexually. I'm talking about like being there, being present, being like watching them, guarding them, like being around them at all times. Like, that's not that. What happened to D in this episode is not a realistic situation. What would happen in that concept? One other thing I want to say: the conversation between Montrose and Atticus was a very good conversation, because I was waiting for that conversation to actually happen, and I think conceptually it was good, but I think that it also could have left a door for a great flashback moment. They used a lot of exposition in it, but I'm just critiquing this. And one thing I didn't like, there's a surprise character that shows up in the first and second act of this episode, and when it happens, like, I was kind of, oh snap. But it just left me feeling like, yo, Atticus, why you a jerk, bruh? Like seriously, like, I really do feel like, yo, they made Atticus look like not a bad dude, like a bad dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's circumstantially, like, you know, from what happened to him and what you find out what he knows, I get it, but that wasn't the right, correct verbiage. That was just wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's not the first time Atticus has done that. Like, I don't know. Like, it's between Letty making that mistake, which she made twice, and not being there for D, and none of them technically really being there for D except for Montrose, and like Atticus just being like this irredeemable character. Like, they go from like he being a cool character to being a jerk to being connecting with his dad. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. But anyway, rate this episode maybe 7.5 out of 10, 8 out of 10. I actually really enjoyed it, to be quite honest with you. But we'll go in more depth, and if I have any other thoughts, I'll leave it to you on spoiler review. Talk to you guys a bit later on. Keep it locked. JBS Wing will stop. Peace, guys.